Let's discuss further with Jonathan Tobin. Joining us from Philadelphia, Jonathan is the editor-in-chief of JewishNewsService.com and a contributing writer to the National Review. And here in studio with me is Brad Hirschfield, a Middle East analyst and the president of the National Jewish Center for Learning and Leadership. Jonathan, we just went through the polls. The latest ones show that if the election was held now, Israel Beitenu would increase from its current 5 seats to 9, and Likud would also gain 2 seats. So could this pay off for Lieberman and Netanyahu?
Theoretically, it could. I mean, why would the blocs be all that different when the dust settles after the next election? After all, the Israeli people just voted. There isn't really much doubt that the bloc of right-wing and religious parties is going to have the advantage. The blue and white will still not have enough to form a majority. No matter how the parties line up. Can Lieberman gain? Well, of course, he's posing as the champion of secular Israelis. That's always, whatever party can play that game, whether it's Yesh Atid or all the predecessor parties, that's always some advantage. Now, Lieberman is being incredibly cynical. It's hard to believe people really believe. This is, after all, the guy that basically did a deal with the Haredi parties to elect a mayor of Jerusalem less than a year ago. When he was defense minister, he evinced no interest in drafting Haredim. But he may get away with it. As for Netanyahu, of course, people do blame him because his brinksmanship is part of this. But if there is more consolidation, some of the smaller right-wing parties, some of the people that voted for the parties that failed to make the Knesset last time that were aligned with him, if they go with him, if Shaked goes with him, why wouldn't he gain a little bit? But we're still going to wind up back in the same spot where we are now. I don't know why that much will change in the end. And we'll still have this situation where a very cynical Avigdor Lieberman is trying to topple Netanyahu because he sees that he's weak.
Right. Brad, do you see this election now becoming a referendum almost on the split between the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox community, and the Israeli secular community? Because that was the big issue here, at least for Lieberman, this exemption of ultra-Orthodox Jews from military service. That's what he wanted to change. Does this now become a central issue in this next election?
I think it was a central issue, and this will intensify that. I don't know about the polling. The polling is unbelievably unpredictable in advance of every Israeli election. My concern is here that both Yoav said it and Jonathan said it in his own way. The level of cynicism in the Israeli voting public has gone up as a result of this. This was, whatever one's politics is, dissolving the Knesset, an unprecedented move, was truly a triumph of the form of the law over its substance. And any time a democracy, and we're talking about the only robust democracy in the region, ends up creating greater cynicism in its voting public, whoever ends up in power, we all lose.
So how do you see this playing out, Brad, in the 30 seconds we have left?
Look, I think that they're going to go into elections. There's no choice about that. I think that Jonathan may be right. Not much is going to change. I think that blue and white does actually have an easy path to governance, and they're going to have to really decide, was this about this, or on the flip side, was this all a smokescreen about the immunity law, which Prime Minister Netanyahu would like to get passed to make sure that he can't be indicted while in office.
All right, Brad Hirschfield, stick around. Jonathan Tobin, stay with us too. We're headed for a break, but we want to continue this conversation. Back to our top story tonight. Israel is headed back to the polls in September after the Israeli Knesset voted to dissolve itself. That's after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu failed to put together a governing coalition party. Let's discuss again with Jonathan Tobin, joining us from Philadelphia, the editor-in-chief of the JewishNewsService.com and a contributing writer to the National Review. Brad Hirschfield, back with us here in studio. He's a Middle East analyst and the president of the National Jewish Center for Learning and Leadership. Brad, Lieberman was insisting that ultra-Orthodox Jews no longer be exempt from military service. As we know, in Israel, conscription is mandatory. All Jews and Druze at the age of 18, boys and girls, must serve in the military, with a few minor exceptions. But ultra-Orthodox Jews, Haredim, have been exempt from this because that they were given the time to study Torah, to dedicate themselves to Jewish studies. And this has been a very controversial issue in Israel. Was he right to call for this, end of their exemption?
Look, in the end, I believe we have a people's army. And what that means is that all people should serve. The exemption system that was created by David Ben-Gurion at the beginning of the state originally granted 400 exemptions. It was a tiny ultra-Orthodox community, and it made no larger difference. The Haredi community of Israel, the ultra-Orthodox community, is now about 15% of the country. If we believe the only purpose of the army is to be an effective fighting force, and it has no larger social purpose, and that Zionism does not invite all Jews, regardless of ideology, to participate in the building of the state, then no, it's no problem. But classically, that has not been the role of the army, and it's important to note that there is a large segment, actually the segment of the community in which I was raised, in which people combine military service with yeshiva study. So it has to do with a particular theological understanding in the ultra-Orthodox community that has grown enormously. And long-term, I think most Israelis are saying, you know, something is broken here. There has to be a way for people to live their faith and also serve their nation.
Jonathan Tobin, your thoughts?
I agree in principle what Brad said. It's absolutely right. Everyone should serve in the Israeli army if they're a citizen. But a reality check. The bill that Lieberman was demanding be passed wouldn't actually change things much from where they are now. This is a completely cynical maneuver. Some Haredim are serving. This would basically match the current quotas. What this is about, it alluded to before, this is about the immunity bill and about trying to have an election so that Netanyahu can pass his immunity bill, so that this will perhaps create a revolt within Likud, perhaps force him from office. This is Lieberman sensing the end of the Netanyahu era, or the possibility of it, and looking to stage out ground as a kingmaker. But my only thing about that is he wouldn't be the first one to underestimate or to falsely predict the fall of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, that certainly is what history has taught us so far. Jonathan Tobin, thank you so much. Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, appreciate it as always. Thank you.